So the next item on the slide is health. 5 minutes, and I'd like to introduce Ian Jones, who will give you a brief rundown.
So I'll try and keep this fairly short. So, as you can see, each development, taken into its own context, may not add a significant extra burden, but the combined effect of these developments will be an additional 2,770 patients for the Ada Health Partnership to care for. Each GP in Shoreham will have to care for an extra 150 patients, meaning an additional 228 appointments per week across the town. Patients in West Sussex are older than the national average, meaning they have a greater number of requirements and their care is more complex. So while there does seem to be the available infrastructure to house additional GPs, because we seem to have lost about 5 or 6 in the town over the last year or two, but the consultations didn't reach out to the Ada Health Partnership to see if they would be in a position to recruit the additional GPs, especially with the recruitment problems going on in the country at the moment. There will also be additional cost to provide any adult social care through West Sussex County Council, which also doesn't seem to have been taken into consideration. That's the problem in Shoreham. Obviously, the problem in Lancing and Southwick could be even more compounded, because luckily in Shoreham, we've got just a single partnership. Well, it's 4 surgeries, but it's all housed under one practice. In Lancing and Southwick, it's all very disparate. So, adding to the problems. Has anyone got any questions?
Right. So, anybody got any concerns about health or comments? No. Are you all? Oh no, there's more. No, they're all down here. So one here.
Can I ask what additional funding might be available in order to cope with this increase in the levels of health?
Yes. So GP funding is done through their weighted list. So we would expect that. I think it's gone up to about £96 per patient per year. So there should be about an extra £280,000 available for Ada Health Partnership.
And is that expected to be adequate, or is there another funding?
Nobody's done any consultation, so we wouldn't know. I mean, it would be sufficient, I'd have thought, to fund a GP, but then you've got the additional nurses and administration and things that have to.
And the lack of GPs.
And trying to find one to begin with. So it'd probably be done through locums to begin with.
Can I actually ask a point as well? So if you look at Mariner's Point and the example new builds, a lot of them are quite older generation, let's put it that way. So does that mean that the funding would be inadequate given the higher demographic?
It's pretty much, so it seems to be a national average. Obviously, we in Shoreham have older than average demographics, so it would suggest that it may not be enough to cover adequate care.
Hi, it's Councillor Kat Arnold. This is kind of a question, but more of a additional point, really. This is all very interesting, and is actually an area that I don't know an awful lot about. So it's very important for me to know this. But have you done any impact in terms of that shortage of doctors with these figures? And also, when we look at developments, it talks an awful lot about 106 infrastructures towards doctors' costs, but of course that's just for physical buildings.
Yeah.
So it's just some things to sort of consider, really, alongside these figures, and if you haven't already. Thanks.
Okay, so in terms of the infrastructure, we do know that about 2 years ago there were 25 GPs servicing Shoreham. That's now down to about 19.8 full-time equivalents. So it would look like there is the infrastructure. It's just nobody. I don't think anyone's got in touch with Ada Health Partnership, unless anyone in here is from Ada Health Partnership. They might be able to answer the question that would they be in a position to recruit? Obviously, because there is a bit of a shortfall in the area now, and it's with the extra people, the number of patients each GP is going to see is going up.
Oh, down here.
Yeah. Have you got any other stats on health? Such as the additional burden to the care services, as well as the GPs, as well as the hospitals, as well as the nursing homes, and so on and so forth. Because health is, a lot broader than the extra impact on the GPs.
Yeah, I did try to find some data on how much it's going to cost by Sussex County Council to fund any extra care. Unfortunately, they just seem to be cutting their budgets back. So whatever the provision is at the moment, it's only going to be getting worse with extra people in the area.
Thank you very much. So this is quite shocking to me. It's the first time I've seen numbers like this. And this isn't just about recruiting someone. This is about the building. Where are we going to put these lovely GPs we're going to hire? Who is responsible? Where's the joined up thinking? Who's planning this building that we need? You know, so it's just a question, really. Do we know if there's any plans to expand? There's that little bit of land that was just,
There doesn't seem to be any extra infrastructure being put in place.
No one's thinking about where we're going to have the GP's office. If we need more GPs, where are they going to be?
We do know that there is provision, there is space for maybe an extra 6 GPs in the town.
Okay, good. Okay, good. All right,
But whether or not they're in the right places
yeah.
is different.
Can't recruit the GPs, yeah.
No.
Oh, thank you.
And there is the Pond Road development, but that's floundering, shall we say. It's money and 3 different people three different organisations having to get together.
So no one organisation has ownership of those plans for Pond Road?
No. But, you know, there is a councillor working at it and keeping going, but... Well done, that councillor. There we go. Right, one more. So over there at the end, and then we'll... Sorry, did I...
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of points about the number of GPs in the building. As I'm not a health professional, but I am married to one. Yeah, they can't recruit GPs. That's the bottom line, and people are leaving on a regular basis. So no matter how much money there is to pay for them, it's finding them. But also on the building, that's a lack of money. So I think that's a prime candidate for needing 106 money to get anywhere. And because the current building on Pond Road is literally falling apart. And money is a sticking point on that.
Thank you. And that gentleman there, and then we'll move on to education.
I work as a community psychiatric nurse for the NHS, and looking at these figures, that in 2000 there were 25 GPs and now 19.8. That is absolutely appalling. And when today in the NHS, 10% of the workforce were off sick. That's around about 150,000 people. People have got to be aware, and actually, as we're proposing to build more houses and flats in this area, and as you say, with this 22.4 older patient figures, people have got to be aware that healthcare is going to collapse, and just can't recruit enough GPs. Most of the GPs that I work with are either reducing their hours, in one case to 1 day a week, or they've retiring. So we're in a dire situation, let alone building new properties. They need to get their heads around this, and nobody is actually thinking of what is the solution.
Right, thank you, Ian. We'll move on to the next subject, which is education. And Sarah Hadwin is going to come and talk. Sarah is trying to not reinvent, but regenerate FAST, which is... FAST?
Hello.
What is FAST?
FAST is Future of Ager Schools. It was started, a Future of Ager Schools team, but the team is me so far.
Right.
And I need you to work with me to get school places on the agenda.
Before you said it, what we may do is we may ask ex-members of the FAST team to come and talk as ex-members of the FAST team, outside any other role that they might have. Right, so Sarah.
Hello, I am Sarah. I'm a mum of a Year 5 kiddie, and I apologise if education doesn't interest you. I'm sorry I'm the last person on the block, and we're all tired and we want to go home. I really want a glass of wine. The truth of the matter is, I'm here today because the situation to me is as it stands now, cracking. There's a huge over-demand for school places in Shoreham. Basically, loads of families moved into Shoreham because it's a super place to live. Brighton drift, population change, demographic change, there's all sorts of reasons, but that hit primary schools, and the primary schools have been expanded with alacrity. Various schools have had bulges, primary just shoved in their playgrounds. Some schools have had more planned expansion, and primary schools have grown, which is terrific. But the problem is now hitting secondary, and there is an absolute shortage of secondary school places in Shoreham. If you live in central Shoreham, where I live, or if you live over towards the Jigawelly pub or on the beach, you're not guaranteed to send your child to school in Shoreham at secondary. The choices now are open to you much further afield. The stats for this year's year 6, that's 11-year-olds going up to secondary school next year. In Shoreham and Lancing, there are 540 places, and there's 724 children that need those places. Now, these stats have been well known by FAST. FAST started because of the problems at primary, and then at secondary, they were well aware of it and had been campaigning long and hard. And the parents that were running FAST, there were 5 or 6 really active parents, are exhausted and fed up because the truth is it's thankless work with very little results. But what was achieved is that the population of Shoreham realised that Sir Robert Woodard was a choice instead of Shoreham Academy. Now, there's been a huge increase of children going through to Sir Robert Woodard. It's a great school, it's hugely improving, but that school is pretty close to full. There's 9 forms in year 6. Year 7, when children start there, there's 9 forms. The head said that he will accept the provision of another 2 forms. There's talks of portakabins. The simple fact is parents need to be informed of what your other choices are and be really genuinely considering the schools in Worthing. And obviously Stenning is a super solution, but one of the sites is Storrington, which is a 20-minute journey on a good day. And is this really the fair choice? And what is our choice as parents in Shoreham? Now, this is before a single bloody house is built. This is the problem now, before all these developments. And that's why I'm standing here today to tell you we have to act. We have to ask questions of the developers. They want to build this many houses with no clarity on school provision. There is no clear plan for a school. St Clement's has been turned down. The other solution is the school on New Monks Farm.
New Monks Farm, yeah.
There's no clarity as who's actually running that, who's in charge of making that happen. But we also need a new secondary school, and nobody is talking about that. All this, the numbers and the way, the research, I've spent 3 weeks reading vast amounts of data, but there is a huge underestimation in child product that comes from the new developments. The developers don't want to be honest about who occupies their developments, because then they are forced to pay 106 money, and so I can't say if they lie or what they do, but they say that there's no child product coming from a 1-bed flat. So that's assuming that families don't live in 1-bed flats, that couples don't move into them and then have a baby, or that a single mum might live in that flat with her children. And so there's no child provision, there's no child place that comes from 1-bed flats, there's no child place that comes from, and this is child places at schools, that comes from social housing, because they believe those families already live in the area. The actual truer forecast was, David Etherton, who was campaigning for St Clement's School, did his own research. He did surveys himself at Mariners Point to actually find out who was occupying the properties and did you have children. And the data he came back with is closer to 230 to 300 kids coming from 1,000 people occupying properties. He also surveyed all the primary schools and asked the head teachers to ask how many of your how many families live in flats that come to your school, and again that supported those sorts of numbers. So there's a huge underestimation of child product. And why is this happening? What is actually going wrong? It's because there's a broken system. There's FAST identified this, that aided council are forced to build houses to hit targets, but they have no responsibility to consider if infrastructure can handle it. And that's what we've spent the evening discussing. That same logic applies to transport, applies to all the other things we've been talking about that my brain now can't even remember. But the simple fact is there's no logic because they're not looking at common sense to say, can the system, can Shoreham handle what's what? And the other side of it, the West Sussex is responsible for planning and the provision of all state schools, but they can't actually open new schools. They can only expand local authority schools and beg academies. They can't force an academy to expand. So that's why Shoreham Academy can't expand, because they can't force it to expand. And to be frank, the school can't expand. It's at capacity. So West Sussex has the responsibility, but it has no power to do anything. And that's where we're left. That's why nothing's actually happening, and that's why we're in this situation. And so what I wanted to discuss with you is what this actually means for Shoreham's children, for the traffic on the roads. If all these families now are taking their children much further afield, what does that mean for the rest of us travelling around who don't have children? And what do you want to see?
Right. That was passionate and very good. Well done. Okay, questions, solutions. Lady there. Jason got there first.
Why was the school at St Clement's turned down?
Because there was a low birth rate, from what I can gather, for that window, but that's obviously before the developments. Kat.
Right. Lady from FAST.
Yeah, so I formed FAST with Sarah and the 4 other individuals, but I've come off of it. But basically, he did a very comprehensive plan. As a headmaster, he did all of the work and the research. He took it to the Department of Education, and they didn't believe his figures because they believed West Sussex's figures. But his main reason for challenging their figures was because of this model that they use, that no children come from a 1-bedroom flat. And he debunked that, and they didn't want to go forward with it, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Anybody else? Gentleman over there.
Hi. Yeah, what I'm hearing is that a lot of people in Brighton Hove can't afford to rent or buy properties there, so they're going to be moving out, I know, to places like Shoreham, Lancing, Burgess Hill, Peacehaven, and having to move, say, with 2 children into a 1-bedroom flat. So to think that, somebody in a 1-bedroom flat is not going to have any children, they don't understand the new economics. And, a kind of 3-bedroom house in Brighton Hove and Portslade now can be at least, £1,500 a month. And that doesn't include all the on-costs. People really don't understand, and especially, certainly for myself in the NHS, we've got a lot of doctors and nurses, who are having to travel a long way just to get to work.
Right. Anyone else?
Thank you. Sarah, how good do you think the communication has been from the council about the likelihood of various small expansions to accommodate extra children? Do we know which schools are going to expand? Does anybody tell us? How can we get that information? Does anyone know?
That is such a brilliant question, because that's the truth of the work that needs to be done, is getting clear clarity on what is the plan. There's an amazing document called School Places Planning thing that's 116 pages long. I've been reading it. It gives the information, but not in a way that a busy parent can actually understand. And that's what FAST did so well. They assimilated the information and gave you the data that you could actually get your head around to be able to have a conversation at the breakfast table about what are your choices with your kids. And that's what needs. We need an open conversation with the headmasters. FAST was able to get the headmasters, the people from the Department of Education. We had all these super people who had really engaged, frank conversations and genuinely seemed to listen to what parents were saying. But I can't do that by myself. And with that information, then we can inform other parents, and so you're more aware of the choices. So when you're having to fill in your top 3, your 3 choices, they actually feel like choices rather than, well, this is the only school I'm going to get.
Yeah. Okay, lady over there. Or lady.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'm also a parent of a child in year 5 and totally agree that one new secondary school is definitely needed for Shoreham. If we live in Shoreham, what you're asking, what do we want? I would want a school in Shoreham for my child to go to. And thinking about the Stenning school, where they have it split into lower school and upper school, is that an option? Could we have an upper school, Shoreham Academy, and then the existing one is the lower? Something like that. I don't know what the land availability is or whether that's been looked at, but that's what I would want. And are there any other sites that could be used?
Again, this is all the conversations that we can actually speak to the people that make the decisions about the school places, so that we are more informed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, lady up there.
Now I'm talking as a parent of many children, the youngest of whom has just gone into sixth form, but all my children went through Shoreham primary schools and secondary schools. So there's a situation in one of the local primary schools where they have been allowed to expand, and now they don't have the legal amount of space per child, and that has led to really ongoing problems with the green space that is near to that school. And these are the sort of hidden issues. So although they are at alleged capacity, that's because they've been allowed to expand. And these are things that are going on in all of our schools. So it needs a much bigger overview, and it's so frustrating when you put your screen up, Sarah, and you've done a beautiful job explaining it to us. But there are too many different stakeholders all fighting each other, and no one has got overall responsibility. And that's the nut that we've got to crack. So thank you for your work.
Well, I understand the person with the absolute responsibility is Nigel Jupp, and he is the Cabinet Minister for Education. Is that who we should be? Is he the man who can answer our?
Thanks, Adam. Nigel Jupp is the Cabinet Lead for Education at West Sussex, and he has the ultimate responsibility for school planning places. So he, for me, I think the questions back to him are, why are you using this model? It's completely wrong, and so therefore the basis of planning numbers is completely off, because
Can we just go easy on blaming people, but try and rephrase what you just said.
Or just ask the questions.
No,
ask the question.
I'm kind of, Jenny, in greatest respect, I'm not going to rephrase that, because we've asked him that about 5 or 6 times, and so it now needs a big group to ask him, because we've actually proved that model doesn't work. It's not like we're just being emotional about it. David Efferton's got a big research behind it. And the difficulty is that actually is that there's a system whereby the county council will not approach a new school to ask them to build a new school until effectively that school can be filled. And so that is what, again, is another big problem, is that actually by the time that school can be filled, it's too late, because then there's 500, 600 children that have nowhere to go. So that's the first question, is the model, and the second question is, what's the plan? Because as Sarah has said, there's 184 shortfall for 2022. That's only going to leap up when the new phase of New Monks Farm houses are filled, and there's children within that. That's going to submerge the Lancing spaces, so there's less people to move from Shoreham to go to the Lancing spaces. And there was actually only a 27 space deficit in 2020. So you can see the change is over just 2 academic years. So there's a lot of questions back to West Sussex. What's the plan? And hopefully with FAST and more people, then that can happen.
Thank you for that. So Matt, did you want to ask a question?
Sorry, one other question about catchment areas. So we talk about West Sussex having responsibility for allocating places to children, but how do West Sussex correlate with Brighton Hove? So we know that Shoreham Academy is called Shoreham Academy, but actually the catchment comes from Southwick as well as Shoreham. So is there a responsibility for West Sussex to communicate and work alongside Brighton Hove so that Shoreham Academy is more for the catchment of a West Sussex Shoreham community?
Or rename Southwick Academy, possibly. Oh, is it?
Yes. Yes.
But the catchment stretches across the boundary towards the Portslade area, and Brighton Hove planned the provision of the King's School. A lot of parents maybe should consider that, but do they consider Shoreham Academy instead because it's easier to get to, community transport links are better? Do the two councils need to also work together and look at their catchment areas? And that also includes looking at catchment areas and redefining perhaps what is a Shoreham catchment and what is a Lansing catchment, and where do those divides need to be? Because there is a catchment area that includes Shoreham, but unfortunately with the oversubscription, the Shoreham children don't get to be considered for their catchment school.
Okay, one more from our friend there, who has now, having seen him, reminded me that actually you can take a bicycle on a train, but some bicycles are more difficult than others. Right, so just to clarify, you can put a bicycle on a train.
Just on a question of funding, there's all this proposed new development, large-scale new development, but we're in a pincer movement because at government level and at West Sussex County Council level, the official policy is to cut back on public expenditure and try and reduce the burden of like taxes on homeowners and businesses and workers. So that is a pincer, a really important problem. A need for new schools, new hospitals, more GPs, and all these facilities that we've been discussing this evening. But you've actually got that conflict of policy where it's an actual party political policy, right or wrong, that actually they want to reduce, public expenditure.
Right. So, thank you, Sarah, for that. I think. So, it's sort of over to you, really, now, for this open discussion. I'm going to put 20 minutes on it, because that's what it says on the tin. Ooh, there you go. World clock, no cities. Timer. Da, 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 da. Go. Right. You've all been very engaged. Oh, hang on, there's... Okay. You can wait. Okay. Right. You've all been very engaged, and we want you to be even more engaged. Right. This is act as a group of groups coming together. They've had specific interests. You've got FAST, which concentrates on education. It's one person at the moment. She needs more people to help her with the research and put stuff together. Health, that's down to sort of 2 people at the moment, and they need more people to help them put stuff together and a plan. And the same with all the other groups. So what we really want, I'm going to sum up now, basically to say that to influence decision makers, you need to be engaged and engage others with you. I'm going to repeat this. Write and comment on applications, talk to your local councillors, attend planning meetings, and join one of the ACT subgroups. Now, when we say subgroups, that means education, it means pollution, it means transport, it means everything that we've covered today. Because if we have experts on those subjects, we can put them all together, and then we can help, send them to our decision makers and say, look, we've done the research, we've done the work. The effects are these. Please listen and tell us what we're doing wrong, why we can't do this, but we need you to do something. Right. Any questions? Any solutions? Any something? Right. One hand there.
Thank you. I just want to say, in terms of the decision makers and in terms of getting some action, we've all got the power of democracy. And in May of next year, there are 14 councillors who are up for re-election. And unless they are behind this group, unless they're listening, unless they're actually taking into account of all of our concerns and standing up for us, we've all got the possibility to vote them out. And we need to understand what their position is on all of these policies. And we need to warn them that unless they're behind us, they're out. We'll vote them out. Thank you.
On that question, or on that comment, One of the things that Shoreham has got that I think is absolutely fabulous, it's got a farmer's market. And in that farmer's market, you'll see politicians of all colours, all parties are there, and you can go and talk to them. You can engage with them, and you should. And really what you could do is you could go and talk to each party in one morning and give them your suggestions, your solutions, but they're there to help. They're there to listen. They don't do it for the money. Right, okay, Adam, you've got...
We've heard lots of very good and interesting presentations tonight, which I've really found extremely informative and great. And I'm conscious that we haven't mentioned at all the fact that there's an 11-storey building proposed for the civic centre. And I'm furious about that. I mean, I don't want an 11-storey building in the middle of Shoreham. And I think somehow there's a sense of, for me, we need to get some more passion around this. You know, we care about this stuff. And the central thing for me is that huge building which will dominate the church, which will dominate the Wellington. And then I don't want it, you know. And I think we need to get quite passionate about stuff. I think if we're not passionate, people can just dismiss us as being kind of worthies or something. And I think we need to get engaged with it all.
So that's where you write and you comment on applications and you turn up to planning meetings. You might even consider a protest. I know that's a rude word, but you can. But it's been seen to do something. You have to act. It's a good little word, that. Act, engage. Right, Hamish.
Well, it comes from a point exemplified by the fact that Brighton, our local city, has now stolen our airport. I'm thinking that in this region of the south coast, this conurbation which goes for bloody miles either way, that we've probably got the largest area of brownfield site that I can think of anyway, but what with all the stuff that's going on the wharf. And we don't seem to have any provision for small-scale industry, which is going to mean more transport as people go to work everywhere as well. So, yeah, and I totally agree about a 10-storey building or all this kind of. Okay.
Right, thank you for that. Anybody else want to put their 4 penneth worth in?
It was just about the when you mentioned protest and about the right to protest and the sort of recent legislation that's come in that means that if we do protest, there is a chance that we will be arrested and get another 3 months in prison. I mean, that's quite a serious thing. No, I mean, I know it's kind of like ha, but like, I mean, it is it's a possibility that if we became passionate enough to sort of say we need to intervene in terms of some sort of social sort of what would you call it, kind of like I don't want to say breaking the law, but if things came to that point, then because of the new legislation, this happened in Bristol. People have been put in prison for voicing their concerns, and that's a very significant. I'm not saying we shouldn't protest. I'm saying, but how do we protest?
I think the answer to that is with passion and fun.
Hello. 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 What is wrong with a petition with the numbers we're attracting from all of the groups you've got together, making them listen? Would that not work?
Funnily enough, one petition with, say, 1,000 names doesn't count as much as 1,000 names.
What, more than 1,000, surely, with all that lot got together?
Still, no, it's just one piece of paper.
It does nothing.
Where what you need is 1,000 pieces of paper.
Okay,
and
then you answered my question, thank you.
Right. Chrissy is waiting. Yeah, we'll after this gentleman behind you.
I have a harp, And when you play it, it's beautiful music comes out of it. But I took my harp to a party and nobody asked me to play. I went to council meetings and nobody wanted to hear what I was saying. Thank you, Matt. Sometimes you've got to get off your arse and do something.
Chrissy.
Yeah, just a couple of points, actually. When we got the petition for the climate emergency, we got 1,000 signatures for that, and I presented it at the council meeting, and it was carried, but it got carried 2 days before because the council didn't want to admit that the community had actually got together on that, and they passed it to a couple of days before just to kind of, preempt us. But anyway, petitions are important. I absolutely agree with that. However, I also agree with Darcy about the local elections, and I also agree that we have to put some responsibility on central government, because we've heard tonight that a lot of things get down to what happens in central government, and we've got to be able to change that. The other thing I wanted to say as well is that I would really, really like some support from the local community. I've been involved in area for a number of years now. I've spoken against IKEA at a big public meeting, council meeting rather, at Robert Woodward's school. I've spoken against Kingston Wharf when that was on Zoom, actually. That was a bloody nightmare, actually, because it took about 4 hours. And I would really, really like people to come to public council meetings and be there to support me and support anybody else who's speaking against these developments. Now, at the moment, we have a situation which a number of us have been in contact with the leader of the council, a number of us have been in contact with democratic services about the fact that because of COVID, Ada Council has restricted the number of people that can go to public meetings to 6. And not only that, council meetings to 6. And not only that, you have to apply. So hopefully that will be changed soon. But at the moment, it would be really good. I don't know if any of the councillors can comment on this, but at the moment, I think that's still the situation. And I haven't heard back from Democratic Services. And so I think it'd be really good if as many people as possible could write to the council and say, why are you limiting our democratic right to come to council meetings and to hear the discussion and to hear the decisions? Because having 6 people there is way not enough at all.
It's also been suggested that they hold some of their planning meetings in a bigger venue, like they did with IKEA. We went to Sir Robert Woodyard's there, because the amount of interest, I'm going to call it, from the community about these developments needs to be heard in a bigger forum. Bob.
Right, just two last things really. We just heard tonight that the planning application for the warehouse that's going on the airport site has just been put through. It's a ghastly looking thing. It's 2 buildings, one 10 meters high, the other 12 meters high. After you stand on the east side of the river and look across, you'll see the pumping station, which now fortunately the screws are working right, and beside it you will see this. And it's 2 buildings with glimpses through the middle of between the 2 of them.
Whoa!
I'm not as young as I used to be. Right, as you can see it better now because the light's on it. So, and that is supposedly the finished color scheme. It looks awful. We knew it looked awful when it was passed. It's going to create a lot more traffic because it could possibly be a warehouse of some sort. We don't know. Don't say Amazon distribution. So that's another green space which is it's on the airport site.
It's actually on the airport.
It's on the airport. No, further south. Yeah.
It was approved
just by the screws, yeah.
Yeah, it was approved at the same time as the IKEA was approved. It was a shared application. Right.
Could I also just say one other thing? We haven't talked about green space. And all those 3 developments have one little poultry play area for children.
I think the children in this area and along there and in the skate park are being neglected because they're sitting in that skate park or skating in that skate park, and they're exposed to so much pollution. The children on the new builds, and they've underestimated the number of children there, as Sarah said, by a huge amount, and they'll have one little place to play. There's virtually no green place on Howard Kent. They'll have roof space. There's no back gardens in the houses. How can they neglect children in such a way? It will be their mental health and their physical health.
Oh, right. Lots of people. Lady over there. One there was one there. So let's go with the lady first, and then this other lady there.
Okay, I'm aware I've spoken 3 times, so now I've got my transition town hat on. Okay, so I'm not speaking as a councillor. I'm speaking as someone who's passionately committed to changing the way we think about our communities. And all the people who've come out here tonight on a horrible, wet, rainy Monday night care deeply about our communities. And I'm sure most of you don't just want to preserve the status quo, you want to improve things. Now, the Transition Town meeting last Friday night was genuinely inspiring, and we're going to try and organise a meeting. That's true, Leonie, don't look sheepish. It was a genuinely inspiring evening, and Leonie and Pauline showed us how things could be different. And we're going to try and arrange for the people on the planning committee and the planning officers to see a vision of how things could be different. And if we could change hearts and minds so everyone's starting from a different place, we could build a completely different and better future for our town.
Do we know when the planning committee meeting will actually take place to consider the 3 different developments?
We don't. I have asked. It's penciled in for the 22nd of November, but it might not be.
Okay.
But as soon as we know, and we think by the end of October we'll know, we'll let everybody know.
And presumably they won't consider more than one development per meeting.
This is something that I'm a bit passionate about now because COVID hit and we all started living in our space a bit more. We started living in our town a bit more. And then I thought maybe they need to change their vision of what's happening in Shoreham because things have changed. We're using our town. So every time you write to the council, write to them and say, look at everything together. Don't just look at one development on its own. Look at it together. The important thing about the Civic Centre and Frost's, they're right opposite each other. That's 7 stories opposite each other. Those are towers. That's a wind tunnel. So every one of you, just there's jobs you have to do. You have to write to Democratic Council Services and say, open up these planning meetings again. And the other one is, sorry? All council meetings. And the other one is, look at developments holistically. Look at everything as a whole. Look at things cumulatively. And that's what they must do before the town gets destroyed, really. Just crumbles in. Jess, did you want to say more?
Yeah, I just feel like they've made it as difficult as possible for us to object to so many huge schemes that have been imposed on us all at the same time. So my concern is that they're going to make it hard for us to mount our protest when it happens by not keeping us up to date with when the planning committee is happening and not publicising that date sufficiently well so that we proactively have to seek it out. And I was just hoping that through the networking that we've done here that everybody can be informed of that date. And since we're at a stage now that deadlines for making individual objections are passed, and I wish in a way that this meeting had happened 2 months ago so that we could have perhaps used those channels more effectively, that now we're at a stage where we have to collectively demonstrate and that I feel like that might be the most effective
thing that we can do at this stage, and is to mount a lot of noisy demonstrations outside the meeting. And please, can we have that information made available to all of us? We at the Duke of Wellington have got a venue where we can make banners, where we can get together and actually make the physical demonstration happen. So if we could keep in touch on that one.
Can I just quickly respond to that? Jess, Councillor Cowan, I will call the planning department tomorrow and find out what their plans are for the Civic Centre site and when it's going to come.
Well, actually,
you go through your councillors, use your councillors. We're all there's quite a few of us in this room. We will have more notice, and we will be able to inform you.
you can do that, but actually I asked earlier on this week and got an email back from the planning officer.
So you got a response.
So I've got a response. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I have his phone number.
Jenny, you can put it on Facebook. We're having huge following.
This is how we got this meeting together. We shared our social media, we shared our websites, and that's how we got this meeting together. We put this meeting together in, I think, 14 days. So, I mean, it's pretty impressive, I think. And it's a result from all the hard work of lots of individuals giving up their free time. Now, there's hands up. Hi. There's a gentleman here. No, there's... And then there's a lady here.
I've just got a question about who we should contact.
Talking
in terms
about...
Oh.
Can I go?
Yes, you can go, yes.
Planning permission.
Mm.
I know a few people who have worked in the planning committee with in our local council, and independently they have raised objections to developments, but because of the party politicality of the planning committee, it doesn't matter, because it goes to a vote and the party politic decides it. That's not democracy. That is what our problem is. Sorry.
There was a lady there who was saying something, and then this lady down here.
We have some experience of getting local planning decisions changed from speaking to individual councillors and getting them engaged. So if there were named people that we could contact and get them personally engaged, and if you could share those details, I think that would be really helpful. And if it was possible to capture, and I think someone said this earlier, all the amazing insights from this meeting in an easy document that we can all write our own letters using some of the things that have been captured tonight, that would be really helpful. So names and information in succinct form.
We'll take that one on board.
Thank you.
Yeah, following on from that, like I got this from an email from somebody. I probably wouldn't have heard about it. I'm not part of any of these other Facebook groups, and I was wondering, do we have a collective place that we can all go and visit and then share on our own social channels?
We will do, but you can start by filling in the slip, and then we'll have your email, and we can give you all the information we have when we have it.
Now, did you?
Let's get them to follow ACT on Facebook as the first, because there will be a website.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, right. So, Jason, you repeat what you just said.
Yeah, so if you fill in a slip of paper and give us your email address, we'll keep you up to date on everything we know when we know it. And because we're a big organisation, network of people, then someone in this room or one of their friends will know something. The other thing you can do is you can join Facebook, but not everybody is on Facebook, so you could join the ACT group. We're handing out leaflets, we're putting up flyers, we're putting them in the cafes you go to, the pubs you go to. If you have ideas on how to reach out to people, then tell us, yeah? There are a lot of people in this room whose kids go to school, so hand out leaflets, put your hand up, hand out leaflets to people at schools. So all the areas that came up, all the subgroups, we want people who have a connection with those subgroups to help spread the word. Okay?
Right. Yep.
I'm going to talk a little. I'm going to be really quick because nobody wants to hear a councillor droning on and on. But and I've spoken 3 times. But I want to give you a bit of positivity, because you might come away from this meeting thinking there's an overwhelming task on top of our shoulders here, and you might think, oh my God, everything's really depressing. But I want to give you a couple of positive things that I have seen change quite radically in my time of being a councillor, and that is the power of the democracy of people putting their views forward. So, for example, and I'll give you an example, is that Hamish mentioned Box Park licence. I'm new on licence, but there were 220 objections. The pack that we received as committee members was this thick. And I read through every single one of those objections. I'm not saying everybody on the committee did, but what that showed to me was a massive, powerful change that I've never seen before as a councillor. Generally, in developments, you might get 20 people, talking about some of these bigger developments of past, like the Mannings was about 20, 30 people. So if you are getting to the levels of hundreds of people, then you'll get a consistent voice coming through. And then if you're then emailing those councillors on the committee, they won't tell you how they're going to view the committee, because they can't. They have to be impartial until the moment they make their decision. But you are getting your views through to them, because what's happening is an awful lot of reports are given to the committee in terms of perhaps you ought to think about this, perhaps you ought to think about that, but often you don't hear residents' views coming through so clearly. So I want to just tell you that's a really positive thing that's coming through, and that has changed quite radically over the last 2 years. So keep doing that. I also don't agree about the power of petitions. I think there's a massive power in petitions. An example is that a far-right councillor has just resigned because of a petition. And there's 1,000 people signing that, and they weren't going to do it. He wasn't going to resign until that moment.
I've got to cut you short there, Kat. There was a gentleman over there with his hand up. Or 2, yeah. And then I just want to say a couple of words.
Do you know, there's a really fundamental question. Why are we here tonight, and why are you here tonight? It's not to do with the head. I'm being a bit, it's not to do with the head, it's what's in your heart. You know in your heart that what's going on is not right. And that's as simple as that. And all this head stuff, all these figures and leave me a bit cold, to be honest with you. No disrespect, but I know what's in my heart, and I know it's not right.
Okay. You still want to speak? There's a gentleman there who wanted to speak. Right.
I will just briefly. I think you've had an amazing meeting. Just picking up on the gentleman over there who made the comment about voting in councillors. I wonder whether a forum for you might be to invite the councillors to your ACT meeting, with great respect to those who've come tonight, but to put them on the stage and invite them to respond to some of these issues.
That is something we will. That is something we will consider. But at the moment, we're looking at getting all the information together then putting them, putting them on the stage.
The second thing I wanted to just comment on, which I'm afraid is in contradiction to the gentleman who just spoke before me, although he has a great point in it is in our heart that we know this is fundamentally wrong. But it may. I made the comment before that we might use Mariner's Point as a case study for parking. That it seems to me that there's at least 2, if not 3 sets of numbers which have been talked about for parking, for road use, for health, particularly for education, which was a great presentation, which are just wrong. And that
that work needs to be done on those numbers to generate a more analytical and scientific case to overturn those incorrect numbers.
And that's why we're asking you to help us with those figures and that analytical approach. Now, the one thing about politics, now, all parties are actually represented in this forum tonight, some of whom can't speak because they're on the planning committee, and if they do say anything, they make themselves null and void when things come up. So they are here, they are listening, but they're in a position where they can't actually say anything. So thank you for coming, is what I would say. Thank you to all the councillors. You're here to hear what the residents are saying. Now I'm going to wind this up now because I think you've done wonderfully tonight. Is there anybody from ACT who wants to say anything else? Nope. Okay. So I'm going to repeat my summing up. To influence decision makers, you need to be engaged and engage others with you. So what we want you to do instantly, now, write and comment on applications. Talk to your local councillors. They are quite friendly. Most of them are really nice. Attend planning meetings when you can. If you can't attend a planning meeting, try and sign up to Zoom or something like that. Read the planning applications. Make yourself aware of what's actually going on. And most importantly, please join one of the ACT subgroups. We need people to make our voices heard. So make the voice of the residents loud. Act now. So thank you very much. Oh.
And then a thank you.
Oh, and I've been told there's more slides, so I'm going to flip through.
What we're going to do in response.
There you go. What we need your help in. We'll probably steal these slides and circulate them. It's the last two. So just read that. Join the education group. They need you. And that's what we're going to do for you. Sorry about that, Jason. You want to say?